Good evening, everyone. So, tonight I thought I would read more from the book Direct Realization, Volume 3 of the Ajahn Sumedho Anthology. I read this talk a while back, Turning to the Silence, and I don't remember what it was about, but I remember that I had a good feeling when I read it. So I thought I'd read it again. Well, read it to myself again for you guys the first time. Turning to the Silence. In meditation, we can focus on turning away from thinking or from concentrating on things and from getting a perspective on emotional feelings and reactions and return to the source, to the emptiness. This is a helpful way of meditating. We can find emptiness, the empty mind, and that can be the place to refer to or start from instead of starting from an ideal or position about meditation and practice. If you only know thoughts and feelings, if that is all you ever witness, then you are stuck in the mire of emotional habits, thoughts, views, opinions, and conceptual proliferations. The Pali word papancha means conceptual proliferation, and it is the ongoing perpetual proliferating obloquy of the mind which, once started, just goes on and on and on. It is the habit of the mind, and this is not reflective thought. Reflective thought would be more like, there is suffering. What is it? That is contemplative. That is taking the Dhamma teachings and applying them to reality, to experience. But papancha is when you feel a certain way and your thoughts just go on and on without direction, simply rattling on, one thought connecting with another. But there is a way out of the chattering mind, the endless din of thinking and emotion, and that is to turn to the silence, to reflect on the silence of the mind. To practice anapanasati is another way of doing it. Going to the breath or contemplating the body, one's own physical body, its feelings, its posture, its breathing. But the sound of silence has the ability to contain everything. It's like a background, and one can eventually begin to feel the body in the silence, or the breath in the silence, which has more of an all-embracing quality than, say, the body itself, or anapanasati. At least that is how I experience it. Now, when turning away from things, it is very important to do it in the right way. It isn't a question of rejecting anything. If there's a desire to get rid of something, it doesn't work. It ends up as another form of suppression. That is why the right understanding of things is so important, the knowledge of things as they are. It isn't just grasping the idea that the sound of silence is a way of escaping problems. That won't work. You need the ability to reflect, to investigate, to see the cause and conditions of things, and to realize that there is no point in just being stuck in the mire of conceptual proliferation. It isn't that you suppress things, it is more that when you see in the right way, you need not give your attention to them anymore. The sense of oneself arises in thought and emotion, the sense of me as a person, and then you. So, I create you in my mind through thought, through memory, through conceptual proliferation, through loving and hating. That is ignorance, avijja, of the mind. And suffering, dukkha, is a result of that. If there is ignorance, there is unsatisfactoriness. Insight meditation, vipassana, is looking into the way things are, seeing the causes of suffering, and realizing non-self, anatta. In silence, there is no sense of self. If you learn to sustain attention on the silence for a while and contemplate that, it is what it is. You don't feel that you are anybody. To become somebody, you have to start thinking again. Not reflective thought, but habitual thought, identifying with I and me. That is when you see the birth of yourself and death of yourself, mentally. How many births and deaths in a day? How many times do you get born and die within an hour? That is a good question to ask yourself. How many times do I arise and cease? The cessation of the sense of self is peace. All conditions are impermanent. They arise and they pass away, and their passing is peace. So, in the death of the self, when you let go of the sense of self, of the assumption of it, of views, feelings, and grasping of self, is clarity and peacefulness of mind. And so peace is a natural state of mind, peaceful, clear, empty, infinite, non-personal, pure, holy. You begin to realize what is blessed, what is holy, what is pure. You really know it. It is something you are realizing. It is not personal, not mine. I am holy and I am pure. That just doesn't make sense anymore. To think you are holy and pure in terms of me as a person is nonsense. It is just that there is. There is purity. There is holiness. There is blessedness. There is liberation from suffering. There is non-suffering. There is non-self. There is non-grasping. To think, I am not grasping anything, or I am beyond self, is an absurdity. That is why the Buddha referred to himself as the Tathagata, that which is present here and now. It isn't like somebody with a birth certificate, a passport, or a curriculum vitae. It isn't that Prince Siddhartha became the ascetic Gautama and then became the Buddha. The Tathagata is that which is present now, alert and conscious now, suchness. Tatata means suchness, or as-isness of the moment. When I first came across this word suchness in Zen literature, I thought, what the heck is suchness? Suchness. That's nonsense. Can't figure that one out. If we hold perceptions to be reality, then we have to perceive it as something in order for our world to be real. It can't be just what it is. We have to interpret it or give it a name or describe it in some way. We perceive the world through words, through ideas. This obsession with cameras and photography is now just wanting to capture things, capture moments on film, petrify them in time, and make them fixed, because everything is moving and changing. But suchness, or tatata, the Tathagata, is right now. This is the way it is. But sometimes, when I say, this is the way it is, people will say, you mean this is the way it is forever? No. This is the way it is right now. The only way it can be is the way it is right now. It is changing, but at this moment, the suchness of this moment is just the way it is. The thinking mind has to stop. Otherwise, you will want to ask, where is it? What is he saying? You just have to stop your mind and listen or watch. Then you will be relating to suchness, the suchness of the moment, the as-isness. When something unpleasant happens or something bad, if we say, well, you know, that's just the way it is, that isn't suchness. That is just a cynical statement. Life is pretty horrible, and that's the way it is. Just put up with it. But that is just resignation to misery. It isn't suchness. Unless, of course, you see the suchness of that particular attitude. Or, when we regard the past as something that is very real, we may think, 10 years I've been a monk, 28, 29 years I've been a monk. That is conventional reality. But it is also thinking of ourselves as having been something for 28 years. And that is just a memory. It is perception in the present. When you really look at it, there's not a person anymore. There's just a memory in the present. We are establishing this awareness in the present with the Dhamma, with the way things are, rather than letting all our memories of the past corrupt, disturb, and influence the present moment. People who carry things in their minds are always distorting the reality of the present with attachments and views. The problems of the world come from that, from resentment, from disappointment, from suffering, from the experiences of the past. When we don't see the present, we merely project or proliferate into the present all kinds of things from the past. Once we begin to realize that, we can turn to the silence, finding a resting place in emptiness and awareness, in the suchness of the moment. The emotions tend not to want to do that. Emotions have a power that is very convincing. They can convince us that they are real and important. Years ago, back in the 50s, there was a movie about a woman who was to be executed. It was supposed to be a true story of an American woman who was to be sent to the electric chair. Susan Hayward, who played the part, was very popular at the time, and well known for giving melodramatic performances. I Want to Live was the name of the movie. Of course, Susan Hayward could say that line, I want to live, in a most emotional way. I remember it now, right back from the 50s, her screaming, I want to live! And it made an indelible impression on my mind. When I was in a branch monastery in Thailand before I came to England, I went through a period of feeling I was dying. The inspiration of the monastic life was no longer there, and I found it incredibly boring. The rocks there absorbed the heat, making it very hot, and the food was really dreary. There was nothing at all to look forward to. Day after day brought the same dreary routine. I received letters telling me about all the things they were doing in America. Jack Cornfield wrote describing the fascinating life he was leading, and all the wonderful things that were happening in the 60s, all the things I was missing out on. The 60s must have been fantastic in America, the 60s and 70s, and here I was in this hot place. I felt as though I was dying. This inner voice would say, just like Susan Hayward, "I want to live." Susan Hayward kept saying to me, "I want to live. I'm wasting my life." Emotions can be very convincing, very powerful, like a melodrama. They can seem real and true while they are going on, but for me at that time, there was also that which was aware of them. An awareness of those emotions as mental objects was established already, and I trusted in that. It was hard going, but I did establish my refuge in the awareness of that screaming, crying, pathetic thing in me. That was the thing I trusted rather than the messages I was getting through my emotions, which were in themselves empty. They were empty and soulless things, even though they sounded very much like Susan Hayward, who was a very powerful actress. But still, she was an actress. Getting that perspective is very important and very wonderful in itself. It will change your direction. You won't be hopelessly caught up in your own emotions and the emotions of others. You won't be helplessly caught up in worldly problems, urgent messages, hysteria, intimidation, or any of it. The world is like that. It is chock-a-block, full of intimidation, urgent messages, very important, shattering, destroying, destructive things, terrible prophecies, all kinds of things from the past and all kinds of dreadful things that might happen in the future. When we think about those things, we get caught up in becoming anxious, frightened, and insecure. We become threatened by things we produce in our own minds, so we can get a perspective on that. Not by suppressing anything, not by pushing anything down and rejecting it, but by seeing things as they are. We can always start anew. We are really moving to deathlessness, to timelessness. This is what we are connecting to again. We have been thrown out, like Adam and Eve, into the world, thrown out of this paradise, the Garden of Eden, into Samsara, this miserable place where people are murdering each other and so forth. And we think, how can we get back to the Garden of Eden? I want to get back there. I don't like it out here. It's cold and terrifying out here. The Garden of Eden, here, is the symbol of that which is timeless and deathless. Sanditiko akaliko, ehipasiko, opanaiko, pachatang ditabo winyuhiti. Apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation. Ehipasiko, come and see. Come and have a look right now. Ehipasiko can be translated as encouraging investigation, but that is a paraphrase because it is much more immediate. It isn't so much, I encourage you to investigate the Dhamma, as come and see right now. Don't dilly-dally. Don't waste your time putting it off until the next retreat. Ehipasiko Dhamma opanaiko, leading inwards, leading to Nibbana, to non-attachment. And then pachatang ditabo winyuhiti, to be experienced individually by the wise. If you don't think you are wise, the point has been missed here. To be experienced individually takes the wisdom for granted. As you are developing, you are using wisdom. Wisdom is there. It isn't a question of thinking, I'm wise, but wisdom is with you all the time. It isn't something you lack. It is just something you don't use for much of the time. Also, seeing that thought is anicca, dukkha, anatta, seeing it for what it is a development of wisdom. It is using wisdom in the present. Wisdom is not something that you accumulate and get lots of in the future. You are developing the ability to use wisdom. The teachings themselves are wisdom teachings. You don't become wise through memorizing the teachings and holding on to them, but the teachings are there to develop wisdom, to remind us to use wisdom in the present. Also, don't be afraid of being selfish. Be selfish and listen to it. Get to know what it is, and then turn away from it so that you realize non-self. Don't take a stand that you, quote, shouldn't be selfish, and then always criticize yourself because you are being selfish and you shouldn't be. That is just conceptual proliferation. You will just go round and round with that one. I know I shouldn't be selfish. I try my hardest not to be, but then, I find I'm obsessed with myself and with what I should be. Then you go on into a scenario of guilt and remorse about selfishness. But that which is aware of that scenario, that is your refuge. You can turn to the silence, let go, and contemplate just the state of attention, sustained attention and awareness. That kind of attention is sustainable. It isn't like concentrating on an object that you can't sustain for very long. You can sustain attention, receptive attention, listening, being mindful. That is the balance point. As you learn to trust and rest there, you will find that that is like being balanced. Balance is effortlessness, isn't it? It seems effortless to be balanced, yet until you learn how to do it, it takes a lot of effort. You go from this side to that, like children when they are learning to walk. They don't have the balance, so they are always standing up and falling down, holding on to things and letting go, then falling down again. They have to go through an extreme process of falling down and standing up until suddenly they connect with the balance. When learning, you may have to fall down a lot, but that strengthens you. Little children learning how to walk are strengthening their bodies as they stand up, fall down, and stand up again. It is like exercising, developing their bodies. That is part of the process. It is not that there is anything wrong with it, that children should be made so that they balance right off and don't have to go through all that. Animals are different. As soon as horses or cows are out of the womb, they are standing up on all fours. They are a lot cleverer than we are. It takes ages for us to stand up. So the ups and downs and the struggles of life can be recognized as also developing strength. It's not a waste. There isn't something wrong with you because you can't find the balance immediately, though we would all like to. We need to learn from the trials and errors we make. So that was Turning to the Silence. And we still have a bit more time, so I thought I would read one more. This one is called Awakening to Ordinariness. If you reflect on your mood right now, what is it? Do you feel happy, unhappy, or neither? Do you feel hot or cold? Do you feel inspired or depressed? Do you feel confused or clear, unsure or sure? Whenever I feel confused, I just try to accept that feeling. What is that like as a feeling? By asking myself that question, I begin to notice and accept the feeling of confusion rather than just resisting it. Generally, we don't like to be confused. We want to be unconfused, so we resist it and struggle with it, which makes us even more confused. Instead of trying to get rid of it, however, we can reflect on that as an object, as something to witness and learn from, rather than simply regarding it as an obstacle preventing us from becoming enlightened. This is a change of attitude, isn't it? I am too confused. How can I get enlightened if I am confused like this? But we can actually use confusion as a way of understanding what it is. When you start thinking you are confused, then you have made a connection with it. I am someone who is confused, and I don't want to be. I want to be someone who is not confused. Then you are definitely someone who is going to be confused. So you can simply be aware of whether the body feels relaxed or tense. You may feel tension in various parts of the body. In the neck, the shoulders, or the solar plexus, for example. And you can actually just witness that. Just go to it and accept the tension or the feeling of discomfort rather than trying to get rid of it. You can see this trying to get rid of as a subtle and clever form of desire, because your ideal is to be a relaxed person at ease with life, isn't it? In which case, any tensions you might feel should be got rid of in order for you to become this ideal person. That is your conditioned mind. Your conditioned mind will go on and on like that, telling you how you should be and how you should not be. But don't give so much importance to the conditioned mind. Trust more in your ability to reflect and contemplate and accept the way it is right now. Conditions arise and cease, so it is not a matter of getting rid of them. They simply go. You don't have to make them go, because their nature is to do so. In that way, you can take it easy. If you just accept conditions as they are and bear them in whatever form they take in the moment, then they pass, and you recognize they are no longer present. In reflecting on Dhamma, you are aware of greed when it is present, and you are aware of non-greed. So, if you are feeling particularly greedy or lustful, you are aware of that, not judging it, not making a problem out of it. You are just observing the physical feeling, the heat or cold, the wanting something, or to get rid of something. You accept the feeling, you recognize its presence, and when it ceases, you note the absence of it. There is no greed now. Or in the case of anger, you know when it is present and when there isn't any, and you can reflect. As a reflection on anger, I am reflecting non-anger right now. The absence of it is like this. Through consciousness, you are actually aware of non-anger and non-greed. You are not just aware of greed and anger, but also of the mind where there is no anger, no greed, no delusion. The ego is always connected to the condition, isn't it? You don't build an ego around non-anger or non-greed. Usually your ego is involved with, I'm too greedy, or I have too much anger. The identity is always with some condition of the mind. If we think we have a problem with anger, we assume that the problem is always there, that it is latent, lurking in the depths of our souls, ready to pop up at some embarrassing moment. There is the tendency to see enemies behind the bushes or under the bed. This sense of danger and something horrible waiting to take us over. The self-view is all right, in fact, if we know that it is a view, if we recognize it for what it is. But when we give our self-view a reality and power that it doesn't deserve, then it takes us over and we become frightened, worried, anxious, obsessed with the conditions we experience. Even when I haven't been angry for a long time, I sometimes think, no anger. It is so peaceful just sitting here and enjoying not being angry. The conditioned and the unconditioned relate to each other, and the relationship is to be witnessed and accepted. The conditioned realm is what is really our identity, and what deludes, and we bring attention to that realm first, because if we don't, we tend to create ideas about the unconditioned, like God and metaphysical doctrines, the unborn, the immortal realm. We form doctrines and views about it, so God in Christianity, say, inevitably ends up as an absurd old man, white beard, up in the sky. If you ask Christians what God is and push them to really contemplate that, they usually end up seeing God more in terms of unconditioned reality, immortal. But because it has been given so many personal attributes, it is these attributes that have a lot of power in our minds. Fathers have a lot of power. Some people don't like father figures. The feminist movement in America once said that God is a woman, and its members made this crucifix of a woman nailed to a cross, which they put in St. John the Divine Cathedral in New York. This was shocking to Orthodox Christians, especially as she had a rather nice figure. But why not if you're giving God attributes? Buddhism is enigmatic and strange to the Western mind, because the Buddha didn't proclaim metaphysical doctrines as a belief system, even though the metaphysical pattern is proclaimed very clearly in the unconditioned. It is a perfect metaphysical teaching. It is the relationship of the conditioned to the unconditioned without attributes or personal qualities. In fact, it is rather cold, isn't it? The words conditioned and unconditioned don't arouse any kind of emotion. Give it more powerful emotive qualities and it will set something off. Emotions will be aroused. But this particular way of phrasing keeps it in a place where we can reflect on it rather than letting it inspire us. We can use rationality and reasonableness and learn how to use it, because to be reasonable and rational is a great gift. It isn't a curse. I'm not condemning it. In fact, I appreciate it very much. I value it. It's like a miracle to me that I can actually think rationally and reasonably. But as an identity, as an end in itself, it is unsatisfactory. As an end in itself, it is meaningless. It is merely a function of the mind that we learn to use with wisdom. Then we find it as one of the tools we use for the path, for the Eightfold Path, for right understanding. The Buddha taught a way of understanding and realization rather than trying to convert people to a particular system of ideas, thoughts, and doctrines. That is why the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, even the 5 precepts, are not absolute ties. They are not commandments. The 5 precepts do not command us not to kill. It is not an imperative from above. One simply takes the first precept to refrain from intentionally killing other beings. This is something one chooses to do out of one's own wisdom. One determines to try in this lifetime not to be responsible for intentionally taking the life of any other creature. But notice that this is phrased as a way of personally determining a precept, rather than of me, say, commanding you to keep it. If I should make it a commandment, I would be forcing you into a reaction. You would say, oh yes, Ajahn Sumedho said we have to keep the 5 precepts, and if we don't, we shall go to the lower realms when we die. And then some of you are going to think, bah humbug. How many times have I heard that before? Those old priests and monks always come at me with those thou shalt not commandments. Well, I'm going out right now and I'm going to kill an ant. The commanding form, the imperatives of life, force a strong reaction of disobedience, rebellion, or just dismissal. The Dhamma, on the other hand, is an invitation, an encouragement. It is for us to contemplate and reflect upon so that we can figure it out for ourselves. You have the intelligence, the wisdom, to learn the importance of keeping the first precept as a result of your own reflections, rather than through being threatened with the fires of hell if you break it. That is fear conditioning, isn't it? It is reward and punishment. Most of us are already conditioned that way through our society. We are given rewards for being good and punished for being bad. That is what the conditioned mind expects. But now we are rising above that conditioning in order to reflect upon it, so that instead of precepts being commandments, they are standards upon which to reflect, to contemplate, to consider. Our minds are opening wide, becoming receptive. There is intelligence there. There is great beauty there. It is universal. It is not narrow conditioning from our life experiences. We are opening wide to total sensitivity, meditating in a way which allows us to be totally sensitive, rather than just trying to shut ourselves off from feeling anything. That sometimes is what we want to do, isn't it? When I first started meditating, I simply wanted to shut down. Don't want to feel anything. Want to get into one of those jhanas that you read about in the Visuddhimagga, where you get into this state of bliss. If I could get into one of those states for a long time, life at the moment is too painful, too fraught, too dangerous. I just want to be in some state of perfect happiness for eternity. But life in this human realm is the way it is. It is filled with pain, frustration, and irritation. But that is all right. When we have the right attitude towards it, that is what really pushes us into being enlightened, into seeing, into witnessing, into understanding. If we could all be in the jhanas, and if they were easily accessible, we would stay there most of the time. We would live in a state of unmitigated bliss without having to feel anything in the body or deal with any problems in society. It would be like an addiction. I'm sure that crack cocaine is incredibly exhilarating, that blissful states must come from it because people want it so badly. If you become addicted to ecstatic feelings, then ordinary life must be really painful and dreary. The Buddha Dhamma is all about the ordinariness of life, the breathing, the posture, just nothing extreme. We are not trying to attain miraculous powers or live up in the Deva realms, but merely learning to understand and work with the flow of life in an undrugged, untainted way. Just sitting for half an hour or so watching the breath. What is that? To most people, that is the ultimate boredom. It is, however, through the patient awakening to just ordinariness, like the breathing of the body, the posture, the feelings, that you transcend boredom. Boredom then no longer has the power to influence you. You transcend these conditions, these emotional reactions. It isn't that you deny or suppress them, but you witness them and know them for what they are, so they no longer have the power to obsess your mind.
Oh, good reading. That was really good. Thank you. It's not really a question, but it's more of more observation. It's easier to meditate, not be bored, than having your eyes open and just being in the moment and not doing anything. Is really boring. Right? So, it's not really a question. What is the difference? Because I guess in meditation, you're still active. You're paying attention to the breath and sensation in the body. But I could do that with my eyes open and not meditate. But that's so boring. I have to close my eyes and meditate. Or walking meditation or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just it's all around attitude. Because we, on a certain level, the directing attention skillfully because usually we're absorbed into what we're doing. And so then when we're doing something, or even if we're sitting and waiting for something that we know is defined, then we can put up with it. But then we want to be doing something. So it's a nature of becoming, and I think it's a very interesting aspect of the mind to be investigating, because that's because we can, when we sit with our eyes closed and pay attention to our breath, then we are doing something, which is we are and it's a good thing to do. But it's also having to pay, and part of the growing in practice is really learning how to recognize how the mind is conditioned by that sense of me being something, becoming something, going somewhere, getting something, achieving something, having to accomplish something. And or getting away from it. which is this conundrum that the Buddha points to as a source of dukkha. And it's because the first of the three different kinds of tanha, kama tanha, of course, sensual desire, seeking stimulation, gratification. But then the bhava tanha, vibhava tanha are around the sense of being and becoming, and that's a really important element of impulse in the mind to be investigating, because then we can sort of, when we start recognizing that, then we can sit quietly with our eyes closed and use that time really skillfully, or we can pay attention to, sit there with our eyes open and witness the nature of the mind, and it doesn't have to be a formal meditation, but we're still learning. Just
thank you for the excellent talk. It was awesome. So my friend emailed me, and one of her questions was, does meditation help you pierce to a true reality? What does Zen say about reality? And it felt like this talk kind of addressed that well, but I still wonder, because is there a true reality?
no.
That's what I said in the email.
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that because once you start saying, I mean, and the reason why I say that is because as soon as we start, because what we're trying to do is trying to get something to conform to our conception of what we think reality is or should be or want it to be or afraid it is going to be. So that really what the point of Buddhism is around the ability to see the nature of mind as it pushes and pulls and tries to create or run away from, and to be able to relinquish and settle into and be comfortable settling into a place of emptiness or spaciousness or silence or stillness, and then that is an experience of a true reality, as opposed to somehow there is some real reality out there that I have to think about and figure out and try to make myself conform to that.
I find that this phrase yata bhuta, or suchness, was initially the way that I thought about it was that, like, oh, if I stop proliferating, then I will gradually uncover this other true reality. But like, the proliferation is the part of the suchness.
Yeah.
And it's just about finding freedom no matter what the view is.
Yep. Yeah, and it all comes back to that quality of relinquishing, releasing, letting go.
Constantly non-grasping, continuously.
Yep. Disentangling.
So no.